My dad locked me outside barefoot in the snow on Christmas Eve for asking why I didn't have any gifts. Then a black limo pulled up in front of the house.
Welcome back to PopcornRest This Story. Today's story is about a young woman who's been years feeling invisibles in her own family until one for a Christmas tree changed everything. After being locked outside in the freezing cold by her father, a stranger arrives with a truth that would unravel 12 years of lying and lead her to the families he never knew he still had. Let's get started.
I want to tell you what it looked like through the window. 30 people, warm light, someone's laugh cutting through the music. My stepsister Kelsey was sitting in the middle of it all with a pile of gift bags at her feet, pulling tissue paper out of boxes, holding things up to show the room. My dad was refilling glasses. My stepmother was accepting compliments on the appetizers. I was standing on the front porch in my socks that it was December. It was minus 12°C. I had been outside for about 4 minutes and I couldn't feel my feet. Some background that my mom died when I was 9. The day of her funeral, my dad told my maternal grandmother she was no longer welcome in our family. I don't know exactly what was said. I was 9 and I was standing near the coat tracks trying to understand what was happening. What I know is that afterward my grandmother was gone. We moved to a different city within a few months, and my dad told me at some point that she had died of a heart attack. I believed him for 12 years. When I was 11, my dad remarried. My stepmother, Brenda, has a daughter named Kelsey who is 2 years younger than me. When they moved in, I moved down. Not metaphorically. I was relocated to the basement, which had a working light and a small window near the ceiling that looked out at the lawn. The arrangement was never discussed. It just happened, the way a lot of things in that house happened. Presented as obvious, not open for comment. I did the laundry. I did the dishes. I cleaned the bathrooms and vacuumed and made sure the kitchen looked right before guests came. Kelsey did not do these things. I understood that this was the shape of my life in that house, and I told myself it was. Temporary. When I got into nursing school, I discovered what. Temporary actually meant as my dad had paid off. Kelsey's credit card balance the previous year. He had also co-signed a car loan for her. When I mentioned that tuition was coming up, he said I should look into student loans because he couldn't commit to anything right now. I got the part-time jobs. I paid my own tuition. I drove my grandmother's old car, which was the one thing of hers I had been allowed to keep, my grandmother's old car. 18 months into nursing school. I was packing up my childhood bedroom, the basement, to bring more things to my apartment near campus. In the back of the closet, I found a box I didn't recognize. Inside was a silk scarf that still smelled like something I couldn't name, a pearl necklace, and a photograph. The photograph was of a woman I had never seen clearly in my memory, but recognized immediately. She was standing in a garden. The date on the back said 2001. She was alive and she was smiling, and she was my grandmother. I sat on the basement floor for a long time. 2 months later, I noticed something on a resale app. A pearl necklace. My mother's pearl necklace. Listed by an account I was able to trace back to my stepmother. The price was $405, brought it to my dad. He said Brenda must not have. Realized it was sentimental and that I should have. Kept my things in a more organized place. I said I had kept it in a box in the back of a closet. He said he wasn't going. To make it a bigger thing than it needed to be, I stopped asking him things after that Christmas. Eve this year, I came home for the holiday because I still did that. 30 people at the party, Kelsey's friends and my stepmother's friends and my dad's colleagues. The house looked beautiful. I helped set up for 3 hours before the guests arrived, that at some point in the evening the gifts happened. I watched from the doorway. Kelsey got a handbag. She got jewelry. She got an envelope that made her shriek and hug my dad. There was nothing for me. I stood there for a moment. Then I walked over to my dad and I asked him quietly, "Did I not get anything this year?" He looked at me. His expression did something I won't try to describe. He said, "Stay outside until you learn how to be grateful for what this family gives you." Then he walked me to the front door and closed it. I heard the lock turn. I stood on the porch in my socks. I didn't bang on the door. I didn't shout. I looked at my feet and thought about the basement bedroom and the laundry and the pearl necklace listed for $1.45 and 12 years of calling a dead woman by the name of my grandmother. I was thinking about all of this when headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. A black car pulled up. A door opened. A woman stepped out. She looked at me the way you look at someone you have been trying to find for a Very long time. She took off her coat and put it around my shoulders without saying anything. Then she said, "Let's go. I went to TL. DR, Mom died when I was 9. Dad told me my maternal grandma died too. She didn't. Moved us away. Remarried. Relegated me to the basement. Worked 2 jobs to pay for nursing school while Dad paid for my stepsister's car and credit card debt. Found a box with my mom's things, including a photo that proved Grandma was alive. Stepmom sold Mom's pearl necklace online for $45. Christmas Eve, 30 guests. Stepsister got piles of gifts. I got nothing. Asked Dad why. He locked me outside barefoot at -12 Celsius. Was standing on the porch watching them through the window when a black limo pulled up. The woman who stepped out was my grandmother. Writing this from her guest room. Edit. We drove for about an hour before I could say anything. She talked. I'll write the rest tomorrow. Edit too. Okay. I have some things to say.
Honestly, reading this now, it just completely horse-freaking. What started out as a sad, frustrating about a family picking a favorite has morphed into something was darker and more tragic. The OP wasn't just neglected. They were treated like strangers in their own house, forced in the basement, used and free labor, and constantly reminded that their stepsister mattered more, but discovering that the dad actually lied about the trained mother dying and just left their late mother's belongings get sold off. That processed the lines into something gently sick and disturbing. What really hits me were the Christmas Eve scenes. Being locked outside pale fool in the freezing cold simply for asking about a gift is cruel beyond words. It feels like this wasn't just one bad joke. It was final piece of a much bigger pattern. And then, just when everything seemed hopeless, a black glimmer appeared, and that's when Martin stepped down. That can't be a coincidence. I have a feeling she's been searching for this clue for years, and what she reveals next could completely change everything that the LP that no.
Update 1 in the car. She told me about the last 12 years. She had been sending cards and gifts twice a year, birthday, Christmas, every year, without missing one, since the year after my mom died. Every single one had been returned that my dad had been writing return to sender on the envelopes and putting them back in the mail. She described discovering this, opening her mailbox 1 October and finding her birthday card for me back inside with my old address crossed out and those 3 words in handwriting she recognized. She said she had stood at the mailbox for a long time. She had hired someone to help her find us when we moved. She knew the address. She knew my school. She had driven past the house more than once. She said, and she was not proud of that last part, but she wanted me to know she had never stopped. She said she had come tonight because a neighbor of my dad's had reached out to her through a channel I don't fully understand. Someone had her contact information somehow and had told her that things were not right in that house. I asked her why she hadn't just knocked on the door years ago. She said she had been advised, legally, that it could complicate things and that she had believed there would be time to do it properly. She said she was wrong about that and that she was sorry. I spent the night in her guest room. It had a window that looked out at a garden. Real curtains, not a ceiling window looking at a lawn. I lay in the dark for a while and thought about my grandmother being dead and then being alive and my mother being dead and then being the kind of person who had a garden and curtains in the guest room that my dad called 4 times. I watched the screen light up and go dark as my stepmother texted. I ran and put my phone face down. I didn't feel angry exactly. I felt like someone who had been reading a book in the wrong order and had just been handed the first chapter in the morning. My grandmother made breakfast. She put a plate in front of me and sat across from me and asked about nursing school, what I was studying, what the clinical rotations were like, whether I had a specialty I was thinking about. She asked the questions like someone who had been waiting to ask them for a long time and was careful not to use them up too fast. I ate the whole plate. I think it was the first time in years I had eaten a full meal in someone else's kitchen without planning to do the dishes afterward. I stayed for 3 days. Then I went back to my apartment. Then I came back the next weekend. Then the one after that.
I have to admit, this update hits me in a completely different way than the first one. There's still a lot of pain here, but for the first time, I feels like the OP is experiencing something they've been missing for years. Jesse care. The details are a waste time. The great first question, the grace room. Even the fact that they could eat a meal without immediately thinking about chores, though as such small things, but they say so much. At the same time, I can't stop thinking about everything that still hasn't been explained. 10 years of lie don't just disappear because the truth finally comes out. The DAS phone calls, the stepmother texts, the sudden interest after being ignored for so long. It's all food suspicious to me. Something told me this story is far from over, and I have a feeling the next update is where the real fallout begins.
Update 2. For now, it was 8 months ago. I finished nursing school. I'm working now, a hospital about 20 minutes from my grandmother's house, which is also where I live. I moved in properly about 4 months after Christmas. My grandmother converted a room upstairs. It has a window that looks out at the same garden as the guest room, just from a different angle that my grandmother was at the graduation ceremony. She sat in the 3rd row, and she was the loudest person in the room when they called my name. I had not invited my dad. I had thought about it for about 30 seconds and then moved on. He called a handful of times in the first few months. Brenda texted twice. I read the messages, felt something I don't have a precise word for, and put my phone down. After a while, the calls stopped. I don't know what their lives look like now. I don't follow any of it. What I know is that there's a version of the next decade where I spend it trying to understand why my dad is the way he is, and a version where I don't. And I've chosen the second one that my grandmother had kept everything, every returned card, every returned package, 12 years of them in a box in her closet that she had moved with her when she moved houses twice. She showed me about a month after I moved in, asked if I wanted to open them or if I wanted her to put them away. I said I wanted to open them. We sat on the living room floor and did it one by one. Birthday cards with stamps for the years she had sent them. Notes in her handwriting that said things like, "I am thinking of you today, and I hope you have a good day," and once. When I would have been 13, I know you probably can't read this, but I'm still here that it took most of an afternoon. We didn't talk much while we were doing it. She handed them to me, and I read them and set them in a pile. 12 years of someone trying to reach me, so there is a case my grandmother has had him for several years. He is large and opinionated, and has apparently decided that I am acceptable because he has slept at the foot of my bed every night since I moved in. I didn't know I needed this. I know it now, so my dad told me to stay outside until I learned. Respect, I've thought about that. Sentence a lot since Christmas Eve about what respect meant to him and what it took me 21 years too. Understand it meant something completely different to me she meant, except the situation. Be grateful. Don't ask questions. Stay in the shape I've made for you. I stayed outside. And then a car came, and a woman got out and put her coat around my shoulders, and that was the end of that version of my life. I learned something, I guess. Just not what he intended. Not the asshole. But this was never really an am I the asshole situation. That was just a thing that happened, and then a thing that changed. I have a window that looks out at a garden. I have a grandmother who kept 12 years of returned mail in a box and moved it with her twice. I have a cat at the foot of my bed. The basement had a window near the ceiling that looked at a lawn. That's the difference to long. Didn't read. Grandmother sent cards and gifts every year for 12 years. Dad marked every one returned to sender. She hired someone to find me, knew where I lived, had driven past the house. A neighbor contacted her the night of Christmas Eve. She drove straight there. We sat in her car and she told me everything. I stayed 3 days, went back to my apartment, came back. Moved in properly 4 months later. Grandmother at the front row of my graduation. Dad called a few times, stopped. Opened 12 years of returned cards together on the living room floor. One said, "I know you probably can't read this, but I'm still here. Cat sleeps at the foot of my bed. Window looks out at a garden." That's the whole thing.
After reading the entire story, I think what affects me most wasn't the shocking Christmas Eve moment, or even the discovery that the brand model was alive, is we're realizing how many years the OP's been believing they were worthless than anyone else around them. When you grow up in an environment like that, unfair treatment can start to feel normal. That's what makes this story so sad, but also powerful. The details that stay with me are in the traumatic swans. Is the Dre mother asking about Norton School? Is openings held gears up on Open's cast on the living room floor? Is the cat choosing to sleep at the foot of the bed every night? Those small moments quietly show that the OP has been missing all along, a place where they didn't have to learn kindness. I also love that the ending doesn't focus on anger. The OP stopped chasing explanations and start building a life instead. Either way, the story begins with someone standing alone in the cold, looking through a window at a family they never truly belonged to. It ends with them finally on the other side of the glass, looking out at a garden surrounded by people and even a cat that Chansey won them there. So let me know what you guys think about this story, because I guess they want to hear that. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.